Okay, welcome. This is another Elli mentor discussion. Today we are going to do a case study on something I've had asked of me several times is why don't we show more examples of good design, good lighting design. So today we're going to do that. We're going to get into some details on that. Let me go ahead and share the screen. Okay, here we go. By the way, I do have some notes on this. The first several slides are basically bullet points and notes that you can basically study on your own and use as a reference. So I can send those out, just contact me through email, and then I'll go ahead and take care of that for you. Okay, so the question is, what is good design? And there's a couple definitions that I found when I started doing some research on this. I wanted to see what was out there and what the lighting industry is actually describing for this. How does design, how does our industry, how do professionals that do this work basically describe this? So first one is creating a well-balanced and visually comfortable environment by strategically using different light layers, focusing on functionality, and considering both aesthetics and energy efficiency. That's the first definition. Second definition, which is similar, a little different, creating a visually pleasing and functional space by carefully considering the type, placement, and level of illumination. It uses multiple layers of lighting to create ambience, highlight focal points, and ensure sufficient visibility for tasks. And basically, it's about creating an atmosphere that enhances spaces, functionality, and appeal. It usually means even lighting. So these terms or these different ways of describing what good design is are all great, and it makes sense. But as we'll see, there's several things that are missing when trying to determine how to create a good design. So considerations for good design. I again took this, I found this on the internet. If you look this up, it gave us a list of about 7 different um, considerations. And let's go through each one of these. And again, this is all part of the notes. I will send this to you so that you have this. The first one is layering. There's three basic types of light. Ambient lighting, which is like general lighting. It's usually softer level 1 type lighting. Task lighting, which is focused in on the task or the element, so having enough light for that. And then accent lighting. So the idea is to use the 3 different levels of light to create depth and visual interest within the space. Functionality, purpose, or the intent of the space. I use these terms a lot, purpose and intent, because that's really what should govern us when we are creating our designs. You know, you have to look at each individual space, whether it's the front yard or it's an entertainment area in the back patio. You have to look at each individual space and determine, okay, what's the purpose? Who's going to be using this space? And what's your designer's intent? Those are important. Providing adequate light for tasks and activities. So you always want to make sure you have enough light for these different things that you're trying to consider for the homeowner or for the client. Aesthetics. It's the use of right fixtures and color temperatures. Now, when I say right fixtures, that means the fixtures that are going to apply the basic lighting application that you need. Is it a more broad wash of light? Is it pinpointed, focused in? So you have to know the light fixtures and their output, how the pattern of light comes out of it. So then that way you can apply that properly. The goal here is creating a welcoming and comfortable atmosphere. Um, so atmosphere, while we're talking about this, aesthetics and atmosphere usually go together. Atmosphere is the experience that we're having within the space, and it's much like mood or the emotional value that you gain from the space. So remember that as we move forward too. Efficiency, obviously, in today's world, everything's about energy efficiency, minimizing waste, and those have to be part of the goals that you're trying to do as part of your good design, ideally. Flexibility, this comes down to basic controls. How do you want to control the lighting system? Is it all on, all off? That's not ideally the best way to do it because then you're using more energy, so then that ties into efficiency again. So you want to be able to adjust the light levels. You want to be able to create different scenes through the use of controls, whether it's a manual switch or it's automated. There's different ways to do that. Number 6, avoiding glare and harsh shadows. Glare is a huge issue, a huge problem for all trades within the lighting industry. So just because we're landscape lighting, I mean, we're equally as important as the rest of them. And we have to be aware of, where's the light aimed at? Can we see it? Is it causing, problematic glare that's going to be cause a safety issue, somebody to fall down or they can't see, whatever, that type of thing. Harsh shadows, sometimes, excessive shadows can be created if you're not paying attention to where the light is positioned initially, that like large tree branches or sections of walls, things like that, you can actually create harsh shadows, which can be a safety hazard. The last one is color rendering. You want to be able to display accurate colors. Maybe our our role as landscape lighting designers in our position, it's not as critical to have exact color displays, I would say, because we're dealing with plant materials. A lot of plant materials will absorb light or will reflect it, and we may get a variance in that anyways. But if color rendering is a matter to you and important for a color display, for example, or an art piece, then make sure that you have the highest CRI possible to render that color. And then it also helps to develop mood. So by using different colors or variations of the color white, you can help to create different mood. Okay, how is lighting design measured? Currently, and you can see this description here, it's pretty lengthy. This is what's commonly listed when you look at like the IES and these different large organizations. I'll just read it real quick in case you don't get this copy, but it says, a lighting designer must consider the following key characteristics: lamp life, system efficiency, lumen maintenance, color rendering and appearance, daylight integration and control, light distribution, points of interest, cost, system control, and flexibility. A lot of words, and it doesn't consider the experience or the feeling that you have in the space. That's a problem. Typically, it's measured by its impact on visual comfort, functionality, and aesthetics. They use key metrics. So these metrics that are typically used, and I'm sure you've heard of them, illuminance, which is the intensity of light. And it's where the light is coming out of the light source and landing on a plane or an object surface. Luminance is the brightness. That's what we perceive as humans, what we're seeing and reflected back off of a surface or an object. Color rendering index, we talked about that just a minute ago. CRI, that's the quality of color that you're actually seeing. Color temperature, we've heard of that. CCT, which deals with the spectrum of color, particularly with white, as we're dealing with in most of our cases. It could be a warm white, it could be a cool white. So there's quite a range in there, 2200 Kelvin on up, all the way 6000 Kelvin and more. So glare, and then uniformity, which is basically evenness. Is there an evenness to the lighting that's washing onto a wall or onto a hedge line, onto lawn areas, pathways? So typically, if the light is more even and there's no breaks, like, harsh light, harsh darkness, like that contrast, and then it looks spotty. So we want to make sure there's as much evenness to our lighting applications as we can. The problem with our profession. So again, I just mentioned this a second ago. The lighting industry has primarily focused on the science of lighting. And this allows metrics to be the controlling element over how it truly feels to be in the space. So again, I go back to the feeling of the space, the experience of the space. That's where atmosphere, mood, and emotion come into play. Okay. And that's something that's not truly measured or defined very well. And that's part of why Elli was created. I mentioned that at the bottom of this slide, but I found that because that's a missing piece of the puzzle, it's an important piece because that's truly what sells our work, is especially being good or remembered. Because if we can get a customer to have an experience in a space, an emotional experience, then they'll remember that, or they're going to want to relive that experience as well as their friends. So it's important to become more relevant as a landscape lighting designer, and also for your individual work, your growth, your advancement. That's the ultimate goal. Can you provide an emotional experience within a space through your lighting design? That's the goal. And then last, well, we've got two more slides here with all this descriptive stuff. Elli measures for good design. So back when I first started Elli, I started thinking about how can we take this subjective art form that we have and make it more objective. And although it's not truly 100% objective based on this, it does help to give format and form to it so that we can kind of control what we're doing better and use these basic principles. And I call them the principles of composition because it's based on lighting composition or composition of artwork. And that's where I found these things. It's already been written, it's already been proven and worked with by the art community for decades. So why not use that in lighting design? It should be. In fact, other lighting designers may use some of this, but for landscape lighting, it's been kind of a missing piece that hasn't been expanded on. Excuse me, I'm gonna get a drink here. Okay, so there are 6 principles of composition. I have a separate class on this that I've taught called Lighting Design Awareness, where we go through each one of these principles in great detail. And I show a ton of photos on this. We're going to show some photos today, which will relate to that. But the 6 principles are balance, contrast, emphasis, pattern and rhythm, movement, and unity. Now, I tend to lump pattern and rhythm and movement together as kind of one topic because they're similar. They deal with repetition, and it's an impression of action and movement. And that's something when you're seeing a repeating element in design, shapes or forms or light fixtures or light output, if you see these repeating, that's basically a pattern. And the rhythm is how frequent you see these individual items being repeated. Is it quite random or very random to where they're spaced far apart, or is it like really close together? So then that way it looks like it's moving fast versus moving slow. So that's pattern and rhythm and movement. I'm going a little bit out of order here, but I'm going to show you a small example of this. I'm not going to go into the full details of all of these today, but I want to just kind of, whet your appetite, if you will, so that you can kind of understand what's going on. Emphasis, which we've all heard of, that's the same as focal point. What is the part of the space that's drawing the most attention? And ideally, we need to know this when we're designing properties so that we can direct the attention to that element. So that's typically, it'll have the greatest contrast for one, and it's easy to spot. It could be one of the things with pattern and rhythm, which we just mentioned. When you see things repeating, it usually leads to something. It leads the eye, it moves the eye to ideally the emphasis. That's the goal. So if you're going to use elements that repeat, you want to have that break in the rhythm, which is ultimately the emphasis, the focal point. Contrast, that's a big one. There's two different parts to contrast. There's five, but I only include two. One is called light dark contrast, and the other is called warm cool contrast. One relates to intensity or brightness, and then the other one relates to color and mood. So we want to work with those because that will help make the space or the experience more interesting. We'll show examples of that too. Balance. This is the arrangement and or layout of objects within the space. And it's the visual weight of each object. How does it lay out? Does it feel balanced? Does it look like it's more leaning to one side or the other or front to back? We'll talk about that a little bit more coming up too. And then lastly, unity is kind of a combination of everything. So you want to get a sense of cohesion in the space or a sense of harmony where everything works together. So each one of these things, balance, contrast, emphasis, pattern, rhythm, and movement, everything works together to fulfill the space and make it feel good, make it feel welcoming, comfortable, like we just described in the initial descriptions. So then that way it feels unified. That's the goal. So that comprises the 6 different parts or the principles of composition. Now, to the last slide of all this information, a format to consider. That's what I call this. I've tried to combine all the things that I just discussed briefly, whether it's the definitions or the principles of composition and or the different word combinations that were used in this, the layouts that I showed before. So we have, again, seven points here. First one is determine and ensure the purpose of the space. What is the designer's intent? Okay, you have to know that before you start anything. So again, if you're just doing a front yard, I typically, when I describe how to approach the front yard, you want to always lead people to the front door. That's the goal. Should be the emphasis, the front door, basically. Because, well, again, you want people invited into the house, and that's typically the goal that most homeowners have. So again, find the purpose of the space. Let's say you're in the backyard and you are in an area that's more for relaxing, so that's the purpose. It's for calmness and serenity, thought. Maybe it's prayer, whatever it is. You want to now design around that. How is it going to be used? Is it used by one person or maybe 2 people or a group of people? Is it geared towards socialization or entertainment activities? There's different ways to illuminate the space based on how it's going to be used. So that's what this purpose or this intent is. That's always, you start there before you do anything else. Second, I always shift to the principles of composition, like we just talked about, and try and fulfill, like if I'm working on an individual space, start off with balance or start off with emphasis. What is going to be my focal point in that space? And then start to build out from there, so that you can fill all the principles in composition. And along with that, this is number 3, use proper light levels, layering of light. This is important because this is how you create depth. We talked about ambient light. That's the general lighting of the space. So you've got to have a nice, soft, even level of lighting throughout, at least in areas where there's travel, specifically like pathways, access routes, whatever it is. So then that way it feels comfortable and safe. And then you can layer on top of that, go to lighting level 2 and lighting level 3, which is the highest level, and to highlight either the focal point and or alternate parts of the composition. I'll show you pictures of that coming up as well. Number 4, ensure the aesthetics of the lighting. Again, right application, right color. Again, this helps to develop the atmosphere, the mood. If it's more of a calming space, peaceful, serene space for relaxation, then use warmer light for that area. Kelvin temperature, maybe 2700 Kelvin, 2500, 2200, more like flame color, for certain aspects of the area. Maybe even using candles or fire in a different sense. Those are good touches for calming the space down and making it feel comfortable. Almost like when you go out for dinner, dining. Same thing in restaurants. If you notice, nice restaurants will warm up the light and soften the light in that dining experience for the fine dining restaurants. So keep that in mind. Same thing with these spaces. If it's entertainment or you're highlighting something and you really want it to stand out and pop, then you're going to go with the cooler colors of white light. And make sure that there's a higher level, intensity level of light for those tasks or those activities. All right, number 5, ensure functionality of the lighting. Sufficient visibility for tasks. We just talked about that. That's the functionality. Does the access routes, are they safe? Okay, safe to traverse or travel. Are there stairs? Same thing. Can you see the differences in the steps? You don't want it all washed to where you can't tell where the rise versus the tread is. You want to be able to see a shadow difference in there, so then that way it's easy to maneuver through that space. Security could fall under functionality. Tasks fall under functionality, as well as safety. Number 6, avoid glare and harsh shadows. Again, that was talked about in the beginning, but you want to make it pleasing to the eye and comfortable. Nobody wants to be in an area where you're blinded by light, or it's either over illuminated to where everything's completely washed out. There's no depth, there's no variation, it looks washed, or in a space that's completely, under illuminated or excessively dark or spotty. Then there's a lot of confusion. Fear starts to set in. This can be a problem. So consider those things. And then the last thing to consider, I put this as the last one, is efficiency and flexibility. Although these are important, I don't think these are as important as the other ones above it. Again, you want to create an experience in space. That shouldn't be dictated by only use 2 light fixtures for the whole space. to say that it's energy efficient. Well, that should take the last priority. Ideally, if you look at your projects and you say, well, how can I illuminate this space at the lowest possible light levels and or wattage use for efficiency? Start there and then build upon that. Don't go in and just start blasting light the same. I'm going to use 12-watt LEDs everywhere on the whole job, up lights, down lights. Then it's just going to start killing everything. You're not going to be efficient on lighting, and you can't create those light levels that we talked about, levels 1, 2, and 3. If you're starting at 12, then you're going to have to do a lot more, triple, 10 times the light levels to make something else stand out as a focal point. So start extremely low, as low as you can, so that you can it's comfortable and you can see and it's pleasing. All right, enough said on all that. Now let's start looking at some photos. Like I said, I have all of that on note form, so just contact me. I'll send that to you if you want to review that in a little more detail. So this first thing, remember we talked about, let's go back. Here we are. Remember the format to consider. I'm going to follow this basic format here to showing photos so that I can kind of explain some things. So the first one here is purpose, the intent. I'm only going to, like we talked about the front yard, the lighting, for example, because you find this a lot in the Midwest, back east, a lot of homes in these regions. It's basically a big, huge house. There's a lot of lawn. And not much else. A lot of homes don't even have trees around them. So, they're not as lucky as we are. I'm in California. We've got a ton of trees here in Sacramento. In fact, we're known as the city of trees. So we have a lot to work with, which makes it fun and nice for landscape lighting. So on this example here, again, this is the front of a home. I'll give you the credits on these different people. This is Steve Schaefer's project from Milo Outdoors. And here you can see, let's look through it from different perspective. Okay, purpose. We want to lead people to the front door. So the way he designed this, now let's talk about the principles of composition. Balance. It's equally balanced to the left side and to the right side with the same type of lighting pattern and effects. You can see that these post lights or these pilaster lights out in front are a little stronger, so that catches your eye to this center point, as well as this white structure in here. And he's got lighting up on each side of the top here. This kind of helps to frame this in a little bit. It's not an excessive, intense, visual, like here's where the front door is, but it's enough to guide your eye to this center path here. And you can see he's got the pathway balanced with opposite path lights here, opposite path lights here, uplighting on each of the set of the columns, uplighting above each set of columns. So this is all a balanced, symmetrical approach. So in fact, if we look at this is one of the things. There's symmetrical, asymmetrical, and radial type balance. So this is a symmetrically balanced lighting design. If you put a line right down the center here, it's going to be equal on this side as it is on the other side. Now, obviously, you have, okay, this section of house is a little different. And then over here, you've got some, plant growth on another portion of the house or whatever. So it's a little bit different, but generally speaking, that's what this is. You can see the softer wash lights along the hedge line. That's pretty evenly illuminated, considering, working with hedges. And then same thing, you've got wall washes up along the house. So it's a nice, even illumination across there. So it was well done. If we look from front to back, foreground areas up front here, and then midground's probably this hedge area, and then background is the house. Some might say, well, maybe this hedge line and this this front drive area is the foreground. The house might be mid-ground, and the background could be behind the house. Now, so therefore, you only have two parts of this front to back, foreground, mid-ground, and background that are illuminated. But this works really well in this consideration. Let's look at another one. Here's another one by Nightlighters and Chris Mitchell from Nightlighters. And this is another great example of working, let's say, from front to back. Although this is a different vantage point, you're not looking straight onto the front of the house. You can see the foreground's up here by the entry walk in this lawn area. Mid-ground is the house. Background is the surrounding trees behind. So that was a well done front yard approach where we can't see the entryway right here very well from this vantage point, but that's okay. It gives you, I wanted to show more of this depth and interest perspective of showing the background trees illuminated. That was a great job to make the house stand out so it doesn't look so stark against a dark sky. You see that a lot on some of these homes where you only have the front of the house lit, nothing else from behind or in front of it, and it just stands out like a sore thumb. It's very flat and plainer. So great job. Again, even illumination on the rock work, on the walls, okay? And he did some uplighting and downlighting. So uplighting up against the house, you can see up at the peaks of these, the roof line here, you've got some downlighting that's happening there. So that's giving you a little bit of added spill in here, so it's not a dark void. So well done on that. Here's another one, Mike Gambino with Gambino Landscape Lighting. You can see here on the front of this home, same thing, the entry approach, where does your eye go? Purpose, again, front door, that's leading you there. So that's the emphasis, the front door. And you can see that's illuminated a little bit stronger than some of the other items in this area. And that's excellent. So now what he's done with all these palms in here, if you notice, there's uplighting on the palms, but it's not direct and hot on the trunks like you see on a lot of jobs. He's done a nice job to pick up more of the fronds, the upper canopy structure of these palms, and it's softly grazing up against the trunking so it doesn't take away from the front door. If this was hotter on these trunks out here, that would compete with the front door, which is not good. So he did a great job there. You've got enough illumination on this walkway from the spill light or the reflected light that's coming off of this area. You can see here the spill light off onto the lawn here. There's also a path light here, here, here. That helps a lot for general ambient illumination. So keep that all in mind. And then again, the pattern, if you look at patterns, let's say, okay, path lights along the walk and or some of these perimeter edges here or planter edges, that's a common theme. The plantings, so all the palms are illuminated, so that's another pattern that's similar. So nice job. Okay, I'm not going to get into individual spaces, other types of spaces for that, but let's go now on to some of the principles of compositions. I just have a couple examples in here to show you so that maybe you can see some of this. This one, actually one of my jobs I did years ago. I just used it for an example for emphasis and then also balance. So if we look at balance here specifically, again, this is more symmetrically balanced. The front entry of the home, you can see there's an olive tree back in here, another olive tree, opposite side, palm tree here, palm tree here. I've illuminated these all this basically the same way. So then that way it helps to keep things centered on the middle. extra highlight on the water feature in here to kind of attract the eye in, as well as the overhead chandelier that's on the inside of this foyer, this entry, which helps to capture the attention at the front. There's a set of steps that lead down here to this lower patio. And again, illuminating each side before the steps helps to, again, keep this balance in check. Let's see, you've got some warm colors here on the walls, slightly cooler color on the palms, but mostly it's a warm light type of approach setting. Okay, here's one by Nightlight out of Illinois. Dean McMorris, at the time, he was the owner. He's retired now, but had a really nice design layout here, I thought. And this one I wanted to show contrast a little bit with regards to color contrast. So you can see here on this arbor structure where you've got a warmer colored white light here, which provides a sense of a little more calm, and it's more relaxing for the space. Excuse me. Versus, look at the trees back over here. There's a very cool colored white light that's going on, or it could be possibly have some green tone in it. I'm not sure what type of I don't know, LED they were working with here for that color, but you can see the color difference between these two, which has a nice color contrast and offset, which is fun. Makes it nice for the space. It makes it more interesting and come alive a little bit more. So that's the color contrast. This one here's Gambino again. Although this is just a simple side walkway area, nothing, you know, spectacular by any means, but the idea is here is this is what should be for these types of access routes and walkways. So you've got a softer level of illumination down below. What's the emphasis? What's the focal point? Well, the palm tree is. So the idea with walkways is you want to lead people to the next space. And that's the way to do it. You want to have a destination or a focal point that will lead you to this new area. So as you're coming down this side pathway, softer lighting below, and it's enough to where it feels safe and comfortable. And then you see the highlight, you go towards it because not only are you curious, but that psychologically draws you in. Then once you get over there, then you can turn the corner around the back of the home, and that will lead to, well, you're into the new space, or it leads you to another destination. And you do the same thing. You set up another focal point to guide you in. So that was a great job. I just wanted to show this as an application. Here's another one. This one was Tim Ryan with Lighthouse. He's an excellent photographer. Although he's not installing these types of projects, he's the one that's in the company that's involved with all the photography, and they have a whole network of franchise type operations that do all of these installs. I can't remember what town this was located in or what city, but I thought this was an excellent job to show, talk about pattern, plus also interest. Hold on one sec. Apologize, my throat's really dry and sore right now. So if you look at this walkway, again, it's another transitional area around the home. And you've got nice, even, more or less even illumination on the walls here. That's pattern. It's continuous, so it feels comfortable. Look at the way that he illuminated the Japanese maple here. Instead of highlighting this, which could have easily been done, he decided, or they decided, to do backlight it again with the wall, keeping that pattern going. And now it's in silhouette, which creates great interest and intrigue, if you will. which I loved. If he would have highlighted this and front lit it, then what would happen is it may become more of a distraction. Even though it'd be beautiful to look at, you're now stopping or you're looking there instead of further down the way, because the goal here is to lead people down along this corridor. So how is that being done? So you've got a little bit of this tree is illuminated. You've got another tree back here illuminated, but more specifically, look at these custom bollard lights. There's 4 that you can see in this photo, which is another pattern. Remember, we talked about patterns, and that now creates movement. It creates rhythm. So you look from here to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. This repetition causes interest and curiosity where you want to follow it. Your eye follows that, which is great. So it's a way to, again, lead people, whether it's a standard path light, whether it's these bollards or whatever, however you illuminate objects in the space, you can do this little trick to help lead and guide people. So I thought that was an excellent use of these bollards. Plus, it creates interest with these decorative cutout patterns. This is a newer, well, it's been a trend for a little while now. It's really nice. Okay, here's another one. This was another Milo Outdoors project Steve Schaefer designed. And although, you know, you've got this large expanse of green in the backdrop here, you can see this pool, walls on each side. What attracted me to this photo specifically was the element, okay, what's the focal point in this space? And a lot of people might say, well, maybe it's the wall, maybe it's the backdrop, but specifically your eye kind of tends to go right to the umbrella, which I thought was awesome. And why that happens is, again, we've got a pattern, this wall wash lights, and you can see the scalloped pattern that's going along the wall. See how it makes your eye move down to the end, which ends at the destination is back here by the chairs and the umbrella. So that was a great job to move the eye to the back here, creating all this extra depth in the space with that backdrop. So now let's talk about light levels. This is the next item. This is George Winterling of Winterling Lighting Design. Although this, why I chose this photo was I thought it was interesting because, you know, if you consider a lot of projects that you're on, you're going to have spaces that are going to have like trees like that. Well, maybe not like the palm trees, but you're going to have trees, you're going to have things that you want to illuminate, you know, uplight them or wash them or whatever the case may be. And you want to be able to pick them up, but you don't want them to be dominant. You don't want them to be dominant by any means. You want them to be maybe a level 2 lighting, which is in the middle, like this picture shows. And it doesn't take away from maybe what the focal point would be somewhere else in the yard. So you can see here there's downlighting that's going on these planter beds down below. There's a wash of light that's happening. So that gives you a softer level 1 type of light down below. Level 2 are the palm trees. And this helps to guide you, you know, not to another place, basically. It's not going to detract from the focal point. So what he did here is, see, he didn't front light these palms, which is a great application. He's side lighting, or in some cases, it could be even backlighting. So you're still picking up the canopy, the heads of the palms, but you're basically side lighting so it doesn't create hot spots on the front side, which would become more of an attraction for your eye. It's going to now stand out more. So I thought this was well done as an example to show you a form of like side lighting, or, you know, offsetting lights enough to where it's not going to detract from the other part of the yard. Here's another Gambino project. Love this one too. Here's, look at the, now with regards to light levels, we've got three different levels of light in here. So level one with the path lights, soft lighting, okay? General soft lighting. Level two, look at this, in behind. So he took, here's your foreground, your midground is at the water feature, background, the big trees, okay? So that's level two lighting back there. It's more dominant than this softer downlight and, path lights. But look at the level three at the water feature. Excellent. Stands out. Your eye automatically goes right to the water feature. And that's a nice job with that. So look at the crispness of that too. So now in terms of contrast, you've got warm contrast because of the color of the fountain and those warmer tones. That's a warmer white light that looks like it is there. It could be maybe a 3000 Kelvin, but I think because of the coloring on the wall, it makes it feel warm. The trees offset that to where you have that contrast. Warm, cool, cooler color in the greens. So I thought that was another element that was great there. Okay, here's another one by George Winterling. And this is the one that was featured on the post I did that I showed the level, like here in the foreground, the midground is the tree and this hedge line. The background is the city lights from the across the waterway. So beautiful space, beautiful setting. Obviously, your city at night is going to be your background, and that's really what you want to attract. You want the eye to flow right through to that so that you can see it. That would be such an awesome display to have. So take advantage of it. The tree, now he could have front lit this and uplit and did different things, but George downlit most of this from the inside the tree. So you can see the shadow patterns on the lawn. Actually, it continues out onto the patio space, onto the roof, etc. And it doesn't provide a distraction as much, so that your eye can still travel through to the back of the city. But it also creates a lot of added interest within the tree, because now you've got the extreme contrast from light to dark. Look at the dark silhouetting of the outer parts of the tree foliage. That's pretty spectacular. So although that could be really the focal point in the yard, it still allows you, because it's downlit, to be able to see through to the city. If that was uplit, then it would be a lot more distracting and it would compete against the background. So well done. Here's another one Gambino did. That again, I wanted to show for light levels and balance here. So you've got foreground, midground is the fountain, background again. Mike does a great job with a lot of this. I've seen a lot of his work, well, everybody's work. I'm constantly looking for good photos. And Mike's kind of a natural when it comes to this. He's got like 35 years in this. I'm not trying to over tout Mike, but I'm just trying to say that, he spent a lot of hours, a lot of time to develop these types of scenes and to be skilled at this. This is really, these guys that I'm showing, these should be your mentors, and that's really what they are, because that's why we're working with them as Elli, having them as guest speakers and to fill in and give their perspective on projects. But anyways, back to this. I wanted to show, again, look at your focal point is the water feature. Your eye goes right to that immediately, and it could easily be swayed with the background, but because of the way that that's illuminated, and it's a warmer look to it versus a cooler look in the tree foliage. A great separation, so from front to back. And then it's obviously balance-wise from left to right. He's mimicking the path lights and to create that softer ambient glow around through this inner perimeter area. Great job. Here's another one by George. George, again, is another one of the masters out there. I mean, the stuff he does inside of trees is pretty amazing. I love that about what George does. Look at this entryway. I did this specifically to show kind of a depth perspective. If you were to illuminate these trunks uplighting like most people do, you're going to completely shut off. That's going to become the focus, and you won't be able to see within the landscape back to the property, the home. So because he did downlighting here, not only does he allow the eye to draw through into the property from the front, but it creates all this added interest. Look at the interest of the shadow patterns on the drive here. You're downlighting, you're picking up these other smaller sago palms, or not sagos, but pygmy palms. And it allows enough light to be present down below so that you can see and traverse through, but you've got the interest and you're creating depth at the same time. So great job. Here's another one, Steve Schaefer, again, Milo Outdoors, which I wanted to, again, same type of thing, light levels, you notice most people tend to put the most intense light or the level 3 lighting always in the background, like the back trees typically. But I'm showing you a couple examples where the midground is the focal point. So this water features in the midground. You've got ambient light out in front here, and then behind the background, it's level 2, but it's uniform. So again, it's a balanced approach and looks really nice. Okay, aesthetics and atmosphere. Remember we talked when we said aesthetics, talking about the fixture type that's being, or the application being used, and the color. And then atmosphere relates to mood. So again, another one with Mike's project, Gambino. Always loved this scene. It's very intriguing, very dramatic, and it's a this is a different perspective. There's a couple different photos I have of this one, but if you look at what's the focal point, it's this back wall and this center piece here, this sculpture on the wall. What makes it, an extended emphasis is because of the way that this is these urns are backlit. Okay, so then it's in silhouette, which creates an extreme contrast, dark light behind, and anytime you have that, that's going to really pop, and it's very dramatic, intriguing. So because he did that, now again, look at the pattern here. You've got an urn that's backlit in this little alcove thing, and you've got several of these. So your eye starts moving, it starts to follow this pattern in rhythm, and it should lead. Here's the break. This is the emphasis or the focal point on the wall. And again, the warmth in this, look at the warmth of the color of light here. There's the warm contrast, cool contrast. You got the coolness of the pool in front. So very cool. Here's another one with George Winterling. Again, downlighting from within the trees, but look at the branching patterns on the ground. And even though this has more shadow pattern in there, which can sometimes be confusing or cause safety concerns, I think this is well lit enough because again, it's a flat plane. I mean, you do have like grass in between these pavers that are inset in here, but it should be safe enough to walk upon, and it creates a lot of added interest, and it detracts from if we had so much light out here, it would detract from some other parts of the property. He's got some of this, the uplighting going on a little bit of these palms in behind here, downlighting coming through the trees to create this pattern. So again, just showing some of that on how you can play with this in different parts of the property. Here, oops, sorry. Here was one by Kyle McKelvey and Oregon Outdoor Lighting. Love this shot. Again, this not only, from compositional standpoint, you're looking at warm and cool contrast, the warmth of the fire and the flames, and then you've got the coolness of the foliage and the trees. But it's also balanced from left to right, front to back. There's depth because look at the little lanterns that they put in on the water. This is like a little pond water feature that are on rocks, which is really a great idea. So not only does that create a little added interest, it matches the pattern of having the candle up here on the table, the fire pit. You're extending that out, so you're expanding the space there. Okay, love that. And again, look at the setting. How is this? Let's look at the purpose. How is this space being used? It's supposed to be a relaxed space, quiet. So you've got the warmth, and softer levels of light here for the experience. This is what makes that atmosphere and the mood more intense. This is what's remembered is spaces like this, because now you've created this space. You're not downlighting, throwing a bunch of light in on the fire pit and around the setting to where it's going to ruin the experience of that space. You want to see the flames. You want to experience the darkness and shadow a little bit. But it feels safe enough because, again, you've got the distant, trees lit here, and around the area, so it doesn't feel threatening. I thought you did a great job. Here is another one. This one is Night Lighter, or no, Night Light with Dean McMorris, his team up in Illinois. Again, how is this space being used? Let's look at that. This to me looks okay. So you got a little, like, maybe this is a koi pond or some sort of a little spill sound pond in here. You've got two chairs. To me, when I see two chairs and things like that in these little small patio spaces, that means it's a quiet space for thought, for relaxation, intimate conversations. The sound of water trickling down, that's going to add to that experience. Okay. Notice this tree here, even though it's uplit behind the chairs, it's offset at a distance to where you've got, I think, two lights are illuminating this tree from more of a distance, so it feels soft along the trunking and doesn't take away from the space. And there's downlight coming down here. You can see it's a different color. It's a cool color. I think this was a 5500 Kelvin light that they use, more of a bluish white light for like moonlighting. So it makes a different kind of feel and experience in there. Again, same thing. Here's another one by Dean McMorris. And you can see now definitely more of the blue downlighting, that blue-white downlight, the 5500 Kelvin I was talking about, from these trees here, these large cedar trees. It's spilling down over the bank and the stairways. But look at that. That's pretty impressive. Almost to the point of maybe it looks a little eerie, but I think because of the way that you bring in the warmth, see the candle here on the table, you've got another lantern up here on the hill, you've got the warm lights from the house, that softens it and makes it feel more comfortable in here and not as eerie. And it feels kind of awesome only because of the look at the size of these cedar trees that just go way up into the sky. It's pretty impressive. So it feels bigger than it probably is. And I thought it was a well done. The stairs are well illuminated. You can see even soft shadow patterns here. Did a great job. Here's another Gambino one. I wanted to show one picture that related to what I call fear, which is there's five main emotions that I try to work with when it comes to lighting design: joy, contentment, awe, intrigue, and then fear is the last one. Very rarely do you design lighting jobs to create fear, but some people, I've mentioned this before, really like fear. I mean, they get a kick out of it, they get an adrenaline rush out of it, and they may want to do something like this on a project. So you should know how to employ lights to develop these types of scenes. So like in this case here, you can see the outer columns are illuminated, and then there's a downlight that's, you can pick parts of the light in here, another downlight that's picking up this area, so you can see a glimpse of lighting in there. So it creates curiosity, but there's a lot of added darkness. Anytime you add extra darkness, it's going to create added fear. And that's really the trick behind fear, is just using a higher percentage of darkness than light. So anyways, I thought this was pretty cool. Well done. Whether this was intended or not, for the overall intent of the job, that's what I perceived it when I saw this photo. I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. I mean, you're still, feel like you can still walk through there. It's not that scary, but because of the added darkness, it's going to cause pause, hesitation, and consideration. Maybe we'll go a different route. I don't know. All right, here's another space, another setting. This one, Kyle with Oregon Outdoor Lighting again. Another fire pit scene. I really like how he did not illuminate, strongly these tall pine trees that are in here in this forested area. Now he did these smaller ones behind as a backdrop, so that keeps the emphasis focused in around the fire pit. I thought that was awesome. And then the light is still grazing a lot of these trees, which is fine. So that could be more of a level 2 type of lighting that was indirect, or, well, I shouldn't say indirect, but offset enough to where it's not going to create the hot spots on those trunks. So that was a great job there. And then you get the general soft illumination. He's got a couple, I think, like here at least you can see one. There's a boulder and a light inset. There's another one over here on this side. And then the flame pretty much lights most of the area for this space. Again, he's not downlighting the space here from the trees like a lot of guys do, which kills the mood, the ambience, for fire pits especially. Same with spa areas, jacuzzis, things like that. You want to remember, how is it going to be used and what do you want to experience in that space? Do you want to have a light blasting into your face or onto your head when you're sitting in these environments? No. Same with over tables, like sitting outdoors. You think about how people are using these spaces. That's really important for the experience in the atmosphere. Okay, that's the end of the slideshow. Basically, again, this was just supposed to be a teaser type of presentation. I'm not going to get into the full scenario for lighting design awareness, but take those notes if you're interested and you want those notes. I can send them to you, and really look at that and consider that in how you're approaching your designs. Are you starting with purpose in mind first? Or are you just randomly wandering around and, oh, this tree looks great, I'm going to use 4 lights on that tree, and you don't think about how that fits into the whole space or how the space is being used? Always have to consider how it's being used, who is using it, and that purpose. That's going to help define your designs greatly. And again, principles of composition, it's huge. It might seem overwhelming and overkill to some, but if we start considering our designs, lighting designs in this fashion, it's going to make you a better designer. You can see from the work that these gentlemen have done, it does matter when you lay it out. That's what makes your project stand out and feel better. So that's my final word on it. That's my take. I hope you appreciated this. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me at understand.elli at gmail.com, or you can call me anytime, 916-532-9699. Take care. We'll see you the next time for our mentor discussion groups. Thanks.